Anyways, so this is the tweet I wanted to show you guys, okay? So Caleb Maupin put this out, and let me know what you think. It sparked a lot of controversy online. Caleb said, if you are opposed to abortion and gay marriage, I might vehemently disagree with you. He does. But you are still my comrade. We need class struggle, not culture wars. Okay? This is a 10 out of 10 tweet, in my opinion. This is a 10 out of 10 tweet. In fact, I encourage you all to go like and retweet this right now. This is a chef's kiss of a tweet right here. Chef's kiss of a tweet. Defend Caleb Maupin. He's getting but he's getting quote retweeted to the nth degree by a bunch of like leftists, woke leftists online over this tweet. And this tweet is not only controversial, it's correct, it's good optics, and it points out the flaw in the left today.
Where this person, Caleb Maupin, believes that, you have to kind of hold on to these reactionaries, and maybe that's because he's a reactionary himself, in an effort to build the socialist movement, when these people literally hate socialism, but because they are bigots. There's not that they're confused and they just don't understand. They hate socialism because socialism means people that they view as non-human get to have the same material access they have, and they don't want that. Not to mention the fact that, like, for the large majority of the population, at least within America, these people who hold these reactionary views more often than not aren't working. They're not part of the working class.
I made a tweet a couple days ago that just blew up.
It did.
And what I tweeted was, I said that, if you're opposed to abortion and gay marriage, I might vehemently disagree with you, but you're still my comrade. We need class struggle, not culture wars. Now, I've said a lot of controversial things over the years, but I didn't think this was the one that would blow up. I thought people might get mad at me for my views about Russia or China or North Korea, or my opinion about all kinds of different things. But instead, this is what got me blown up. I had a Humanist Report was angry with me. All kinds of liberal voices were just furious. How dare you say that? And
it points out the flaws of the left today because they are so consumed over, again, trying to make sure that everyone who's a part of their movement fits in this perfect little fucking rigid bubble of what they consider being like the perfect, progressive. And if you don't fit in it, if you find yourself not aligning with them on any given issue, then you can't be a part of the movement, right?
Of course, when I made the tweet, I was very aware of the fact that, I've worked with a number of people that are black nationalists over the years, marching against police brutality, long before that was trendy and hip, long before Black Lives Matter had ever been tweeted. And a lot of the folks at the Nation of Islam and the Uhuru movement and some other groups, a lot of those folks do feel that abortion is unacceptable, or that homosexuality goes against their religious principles. Well, I don't agree with them about that, but I have no problem organizing with them, and I got to know a lot of Shia Muslims when my travels to Iran. And in the United States, I've spoken at conferences of Shia Muslims that are against war and want to have understanding between Iran and the United States and such. And their religion, they're very opposed to abortion and gay marriage. That never seemed to be an issue. I might disagree with them about that. Fine. But I posted this on Twitter, and I guess luck of the draw, it got this big explosion.
People ask me, they say, Caleb, you're an American guy from Ohio. You're a Christian. You're a leftist. You're a socialist. Why do you talk so much about the situation in the Middle East, the plight of Shia Muslims, about Iran? Why do you talk about this so much? And I've had to think about how I answer that question. And the answer that I've come up with is something like this. I tell the people who ask me this, I say, I want you to imagine that here in the United States of America, there was some kind of priest or preacher, and he was going around the United States and saying that he believed in not capitalism, but Christianity. And that he said that he was for the oppressed, and that his movement believed that all people were equal in the eyes of God, and that no racism could be tolerated, that no discrimination of any kind could be tolerated, and that his mass movement lifted up the most downtrodden people. And then he called for a war of poverty against wealth and mobilizing the poor for justice. And millions of people followed this movement and made great sacrifices. And that organizations were built called the Mobilization of the Oppressed that began building hospitals and schools and providing basic services to people. And I say to them, if such a movement was taking place in the United States, if you call yourself a progressive, if you call yourself a socialist, if you call yourself someone who is concerned about social justice, you would have to have something to do with that movement, right? You might disagree with it on one point or another, but you would have to relate to it in some way. And I tell people that's what Imam Khomeini was in Iran, and that's what Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki is in Nigeria. Amir al-Amir, the sheikh who was brutally killed by the Saudis, that's what he was doing as well. And that if you call yourself a progressive, you can't put up a barrier and say, well, these people have a different religion than me, I can't associate with them. Or these people, they think this way, or they disagree with me about this issue, I can't associate with them. That's not what progressive people should be doing.
The reason to say that you're a patriotic socialist is to counter the destructive message coming out of the left right now. Most Americans, when they think of the left, they think of Antifa. They think of buildings catching on fire. They think of people breaking windows. They think of people saying, fuck this country, F America. They think of a group of very negative, destructive, hostile people who don't want their lives to get any better. That's what they think the left is. I will never forget when I was in Wheeling, West Virginia, and I interviewed a steel worker. And I asked the steel worker about the election of Donald Trump. This actually happened. You can watch the news story. And he told me he didn't vote for the Democrats because the Democrats don't care about the working man anymore. Now they're all a bunch of socialists. And it broke my heart. How could someone say that you don't care about the working man because you're a socialist? But in his mind, a socialist was a destructive person. A socialist was somebody who wanted violence and wanted to tear up the country and wanted to make things worse. He wanted life to get better. Well, we need Americans who want their life to get better to understand that that's what socialists want. And if you say F this country, if you say, I want to destroy this country, it's racist and evil, that communicates to people, if I want a better country, you're not the horse I should bet on.
We as a movement of people who supports like a common proletarian struggle, right? We can't say that, look, if you're a Trumper, or if you're this, or if you're that, or if you're a libertarian, or if you're whatever, then you can't be a part of my movement. That's not how unions work. That's not how general strikes work. That you guys think that, like, I mean, not you guys, but maybe she does. I don't know. Who honestly believes that, like, the groundbreaking, world record setting farmer strike in India, do you think that those farmers were, like, asking each other if they all agree politically on every single issue, or like if they all agree on, like, you know, gay rights or something before they all joined in together for this massive general strike that after months and months and months of grueling action finally achieved what they were all striving to set out for? You know, removing these harmful farming laws that like corporate agricultural laws that Modi had put into place, and now they're actually advocating for more than what they initially set out for because they were so successful. Do you think that they did that? No, of course they didn't do that. Of course. Do you think that, like, before they all joined in on the general strike, they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you part of the general strike, we'd love to have you part of this movement to fight for the farmers of India, but what are your opinions on abortion? No, of course they didn't do that. That would be insane to think about that.
But there were so many young revolutionaries that felt a need to send me Facebook messages and emails while I was in Iran, informing me, as if I didn't know, that the Islamic Republic of Iran are not communists. Well, this is blatantly obvious, but it's irrelevant. I don't support the Islamic Republic of Iran because they're communists. Malcolm X wasn't a communist. Cesar Chavez wasn't a communist. John Brown wasn't a communist. If you have an ideological criteria or a checklist for who you will stand with against imperialism, you aren't going to get very far in the real world. That's just a fact. I've taken great risks and stood shoulder to shoulder with many people I strongly disagree with at Occupy Wall Street protests and at Black Lives Matter protests, and I'll do the same internationally.
Given Kittens on Twitch says, my current roommate used to be a union organizer. She said she intentionally would not talk to people that were obviously right-wing, and that's why we don't have unions. That's very interesting, Given Kittens. You know, I was at when I was leaving LAX, when I went out to DC, there was striking. I think it was Unite Here workers. They were airport workers, but they were part of Unite Here, some local for LA. And when I was leaving Phoenix this week, actually, was that yesterday? Did I leave Scottsdale yesterday? Was that yesterday? What the fuck? Why does that feel like 3 days ago that I left? Whatever. When I was in such a rush, I was late for my flight, so I didn't get to like talk to any of them or take pictures of them or anything like that. But when I was leaving Phoenix Airport, there was dozens of striking airport workers, Unite Here local workers, and they were from all walks of life. They don't give a fuck what
the pretentious communists does not understand is that many, if not most, of the working class are socially conservative.
That's true as well. That is true as well. Marxist gibbero. I mean, you're right. You're right. The majority of the American working class, I would not be surprised if the majority of them are socially I don't even want to call it like socially conservative, right? Because it's like socially it's more socially conservative than you're like Harvard educated liberal elite who's like pushing CRT down everyone's throats, you know? Like, but is that really socially conservative, or is that just being like a normal human being? I don't know. Anyways, call it what you will, but yeah, they're like more socially conservative than the people who kind of like decide what the Overton window is for social issues in this country, right?
This is pretty basic, right? If you want to be the leader of Brazil, you come up with a political platform to make life better in Brazil. You go to the masses of Brazil with your program to improve life in Brazil, and if they like your program, they vote for you. Pretty basic. Right? This is what the Democrats do. This is what the Republicans do. When there's an election, the Republican Party wants people to vote for them. So they come up with policies that they say will make life better in the country. They tell the people about those policies. The people listen to them. And if they think their policies will improve life in the country, they vote for them. The Democrats, they come up with policies they think or they say will improve life in the country. They tell the people about those policies. The people, if they think those policies will improve their life, they vote for them. This is politics 101. It's not very complicated. Right? If you want the people of the country to support you, you need to make clear to them that your political agenda will improve their lives. Pretty basic. Everybody gets this. Libertarians get this. Libertarians don't go around saying that libertarianism will destroy the United States. They say, no, if you want the United States to be better, adopt free market policy. Neo-Nazis say this. Neo-Nazis don't go around saying, oh, our policies are going to make your life worse. No, neo-Nazis go around saying, oh, if you want the country to get better, adopt our policies. It's only communists that have it in their head that we should go around telling everyone, your life should be worse. It is beyond me.
But what surprised me was the number of people who reached out to me and said, thank you for saying that, and thank you for being brave enough to say that. So you're one of the people that reached out to me in a friendly way. So I wanted to just kind of bring you on here and introduce you to our YouTube channel audience here. So what was your reaction to that tweet? How did you feel about it? And what made you want to step in at that point?
You know, for me, it was very much, this is something that I struggle with a lot. Personally, I support abortion rights. Personally, I do support same-sex marriage. I think people, consenting adults, should be able to marry who they want to marry. Yeah. And I believe that these are important rights that we have here in the United States, and I want to protect them. At the same time, however, over the years, I've come to realize that there are people other than myself, who have different beliefs about many issues. And some of those beliefs, are it may be very dear and important to me, but these people may also share my beliefs on other issues. For example, we can look at faithful Roman Catholics in this country. And you mentioned Shia Muslims and people of various other religious faiths who are deeply suspicious of unfettered capitalism, who are anti-war, who support many social justice causes, who are concerned about the environment, who are concerned about prison rights, and who are concerned about making sure that people have a social safety net, people have workers' rights, that families don't have to be constantly at the brink of poverty. People can raise their families in dignity. They believe and support all of these things, while also having some very socially conservative positions. And I am reluctant, first of all, to throw these in, to discard these people or dismiss them as evil, because their lives don't show that they are evil or bad people. And at the same time, I also realize that they're here. If I can pretend that I may not like their beliefs, but I can't pretend that they don't exist.
But if you look at countries all across this globe with popular socialist movements, be it in Germany, be it in France, be it in Peru, be it in Honduras, be it in Brazil, be it in Bolivia, right? So long as the factions of these communist or socialist movements have not been infected by this woke, liberal, Ivy League ideology, I would have to say that most of the people who make up these movements actually do align on social issues with the average American worker, right? I think the American left, liberal left, has gone too far to the left. And I think there's too many people who are afraid to admit it, right? I think that's where we've gone. And that's what Caleb Maupin, he's actually not even hitting on that in this tweet. He's just basically saying, like, look, I might disagree with you on social issues, but we're still going to fight for a collective proletarian struggle. We are still going to fight to address the pains that you feel in your workplace, right? We're still going to fight for those things together because we are stronger together. And
only communists that have it in their head that the way we're going to win over the people of the United States is we're going to go around telling them that we want your life to get worse. We hate the country. We hate the country. We hate you. You're living on stolen land. This country was founded on racism. You should be ashamed of yourself. All the wealth in this country was stolen from people around the world. You should be ashamed of yourself. We want to tear it down, burn it down. I mean, that might appeal to some angry teenagers who are looking for the libidinal release of destruction. They want to tell mom and dad how angry they are about their authority, but it might appeal to other marginalized groups, who feel, righteous anger about how they've been treated over the years. But at the end of the day, that message is not a serious program for winning power. If you really want to lead a country, you don't go around telling everyone in the country that you're going to make it worse and you're going to tear it down. That is not a winning message.
What I think is particularly interesting is that, I got a lot of people tweeting at me and saying that this was because I was white. It was because I was white that I'm saying this. And it was funny because the people that I was referring to in the tweet were not white. And in fact, there are many non-white people that have a suspicion around the issue of abortion. For example, here in New York City, there's a very large Puerto Rican community. And among the Puerto Rican community here in New York City, there are a lot of people that are very opposed to abortion. Why? Because look at the history of Puerto Rico and how it's been treated as a colony, and how, women had their tubes tied forcibly. And there was an attempt to, exterminate the population of Puerto Rico by preventing women from having children. And a lot of Puerto Ricans feel that that abortion is something they're very suspicious of. And there's similar feelings among African Americans in the United States. It's not simply a black and white issue by any means. Now, there are a lot of white folks that are evangelicals and conservative that have opposition to abortion. But there's also a lot of people of color who feel that way too. And it seems like if you assume that everyone who's against abortion is like this stereotype you have in your head of a Trump supporter, right? You know, that they're wearing their Trump hat and they've got their Blue Lives Matter thing and they got their gun there and that they fit this trope, it's very easy to kind of erase all kinds of people's narratives. I think politics is much more complicated than the red team versus the blue team, wouldn't you say?
I would say absolutely that is the case. And I would point out when I was a pro-choice, or actually a pro-abortion rights activist, I don't like the term pro-choice. I think it's marketing language. And it's very easily used by the opposition, who can say, well, yes, there are bad choices and good choices, and abortion is a bad choice. So I prefer to use pro-abortion rights. I was part of a group on campus that was called the Reproductive Rights Action Network. And the reason why that organization had that name was that there had been many people in this country and around the world who had been doing work on this issue when we're saying, look, when abortion or birth control are pushed as ways of controlling certain populations and certain demographics, when they are pushed as the only responsible alternative to somebody who's living in poverty due to structures that are completely outside that person's control, that's a problem.
You go to the people with a message of how you're going to make life better in the country, how you're going to win. I mean, this is pretty basic. And I feel like frustrated that I have to explain myself on this point, right? It seems like people on the left are not really interested in winning over the broad masses of people. They're interested in proving how ultra-revolutionary they are to the other communists, right? That's what they want to do. They don't really care what average Americans think. They want to prove to the other communists how ultra-revolutionary they are. They want to win the internet contest about how ultra-revolutionary they are, and it's childish. If we seriously want to lead the country, we need average Americans to understand that our program and our policies will improve the country.
And you look at, Nigeria. This is a country that has been colonized. It's one of the richest countries on the African continent. At this point, it's actually the top oil exporting country on the African continent. But the people there are deeply impoverished. The life expectancy is very low. The rate of literacy is very low. Child labor goes on there at very high rates. You can look at some of the pictures of the Niger Delta region. This is the richest, most oil-rich region in all of Africa. And you can see beaches that are black with oil and children playing on these oil beaches with nothing. I mean, the poverty that people are living in. Such a wealthy country, but so impoverished by the rule of Western bankers and corporations. And how have the imperialists been able to keep the country so poor? By playing the Christians against the Muslims, right? By fomenting ethnic and religious divisions to keep the country impoverished. And yet you have Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki, a Muslim, who was trying to bring together these two communities and create dialogue, and was doing everything he could to move the Muslim community away from the terrorists like Boko Haram, and to have dialogue with Christians and to try and bring people together. And now you have the military dragging him away, attacking Zaria, attacking the Shia community, the Islamic movement of Nigeria. Or you can take the situation in Yemen. The way U.S. media talks about Yemen, they say, well, this is a war that you can't understand. That's their message to average Americans. This is too complicated. You can't understand it. And there are these people called the Houthis, and they're somehow involved with Iran, and it's just a big mess, and just look the other way. And in reality, if you look at the situation in Yemen, it's not just the Ansar Allah organization. It's the entire country. There is the southern movement of people in the south of Yemen that want to bring back the Democratic People's Republic of Yemen. There is the followers of the former President Saleh, nationalists. But all of them don't want Yemen to continue to be a colony of Saudi Arabia. But by whipping up this stigma and saying that this is simply a Sunni-Shia conflict, that this is simply the Shia versus the Saudis, and it's a way of marginalizing and obscuring the truth about what's actually taking place.
If you're not interested in winning people over, if you're just trying to prove to the other communists how ultra-revolutionary you are, you and I are doing something different, right? I mean, as I said before, I don't take advice on how to barbecue from a vegan, right? If you don't believe in barbecuing meat, you're a vegan, why should I let you tell me how to barbecue? You don't believe in eating meat, right? I don't take dating advice from incels. If I was looking for a girlfriend, the last person I would ask for advice on it is someone who says, oh, I can never get a girlfriend, it's hopeless. I would not ask them for their advice. And people that think there is no revolutionary potential in the United States, people who think that we shouldn't be trying to win over broad masses of Americans, are not the kind of people that I'm interested in listening to about how I should talk about communism, because I'm talking about communism with the intent to actually see it come into being. And so I don't really care if you think that there's no hope here, that the American working class are all a bunch of Euro settlers and they're all racist. And if you don't want to actually see socialism, I don't care what you think about how I should talk about socialism. I'm not interested in winning the best communist on YouTube, award. I'm not interested I'm just not. And I guess I'm repeating myself. And I think everyone in the chat seems to get what I'm saying. But it just bears repeating because it seems like such an obvious point, but it's lost on so many people. And so it bears repeating, but I'm just repeating the point because you can't say it enough. Are we in it to win it or not?
When I was debating Andrea Rovinsky about this, she said something over and over that was really interesting to me, and I never even got around to pointing out what it was. But this is what she kept saying over and over. She was saying, when I brought up the fact that, look, you're gonna have Trumpers in a union, you're gonna have right-wingers in a union, you're gonna have people you don't agree with in a union, and this effort by the professional managerial class, people like Netflix show writers, for example, what they're doing in this effort, and the effort at the time was the Netflix walkout that we were debating, is dictating what social norms are and trying to make those social norms more palatable for the working class, or if not palatable, forcing those norms upon the working class by virtue of their position as members of the professional managerial class, right? And kind of like the, I guess, the creators of what popular mass culture is in the United States. And this is all being done in the name of creating an easier workplace for human resources and the management people of any given company, right? That's what they're trying to do. It is what they're trying to do. Okay? But, every time I would bring this up and I'd say, look, you're going to have people that you don't agree with on social issues in a given labor movement. Andrea kept saying this. She kept saying, well, look, yeah, sure, we should accept them into our movements, but we should also try to, help them and change them and rehabilitate. I'm paraphrasing, right? But she'd say things like this, rehabilitate them. We should fix them. I think that's actually what she said. I don't think I'm paraphrasing when I use that term. She said we should fix them. I want to help fix people. Do you know how insane that sounds? You want to fix people? It sounds like you want to genetically modify someone. You want to fix someone just because they disagree with you on a given culture issue or a social issue? Your values as a human being, be it based on your religion, your culture, your ethnicity, your race, your, wherever you're from in this world is different, and you say, because of that, I want to fix you. You're wrong, and I want to fix you. What type of a fucking mindset is that? That's the mindset of not only someone who's going to be leading a losing movement, right? That is doomed for failure from the start, but it's also the mindset of someone who believes that they are, it's really like American liberal exceptionalism. We talk a lot on this channel about American exceptionalism. It's like American liberal exceptionalism is what it is, right? It's well, because I listen to Harvard, Yale, Ivy League elites talk about social issues, and I'm going to agree with them on those social issues, I'm better than all of you, and you're all wrong, and I'm going to fix you if you disagree with me.
The Saudis are committing cold-blooded murder every day, trying to suppress a popular struggle for democracy and independence, and the U.S. government is complicit. And we need to figure out what we can do as activists to stop what the Saudis are doing. Like I mentioned before, there's a big difference between a terrorist and a revolutionary. In the U.S., it's the Ku Klux Klan, the anti-immigrant Minutemen, George Zimmerman, and this crazed fascist in South Carolina who are the terrorists, trying to suppress black and brown people as they struggle for equality. But unlike the terrorists, the Black Panther Party, the Deacons for Defense, the People's Powers Assemblies, these are revolutionaries. Revolutionaries are people who bring people together to stand arm in arm as sisters and brothers to defend themselves and their communities. Revolutionaries may sometimes have to use violence, but they prefer not to. Revolutionaries are driven by a vision of building a better world, not keeping in place dying institutions and tyrants of the past. Revolution is always an act of self-defense. Unlike the terrorists, the strength of revolutionary leaders isn't what they do themselves, but what they unleash other people to do. Revolutionaries don't terrify people and make them feel powerless, but instead they help people to find strength in themselves, to do things they never thought they were capable of. Yes, there's a clear difference between revolutionaries and terrorists. The battle taking place today, not just in the Middle East, not just on the streets of Baltimore, but on a global level, can really be described as a gigantic battle between terrorism and revolution. The age of Wall Street and the London Stock Exchange is over. Humanity is rising up in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and elsewhere to reject the rule of the dollar. The revolutionaries are not identical. Some are communists, like in Cuba, China, and People's Korea. Some are Bolivarian socialists, like in Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia. There are Islamic revolutionaries in the Middle East. There are secular nationalists in Russia and Syria. The revolutionaries of the world have different perspectives and histories, but they agree on one thing: down with U.S. imperialism. They have all refused to accept a world ruled by a small group of Western bankers. The only response of the rulers to this broad uprising is terrorism. The terrorism of the Saudis in Yemen, the terrorism of the Kiev regime in East Ukraine, the terrorism of the fascist thug in South Carolina, the terrorism of police brutality on a daily basis. These are all part of a global campaign of violence designed to prevent history from marching forward. We, the young people of the United States, have proved that though we're very far behind our friends in the rest of the world, we too are capable of becoming revolutionaries. Polls, and more importantly, massive protests and demonstrations, are showing that this generation is waking up. Facing the disastrous low-wage economy, young people here in the United States are starting to reject the system of global monopoly capitalism. The response of the billionaires is an escalation of the rising police state. They are creating a regime of terrorism right here at home in order to force us to accept an economy of short-term, low-paying jobs. Right now, Congress is working to pass yet another global trade package to strip away any protections that exist and put more power directly into the hands of the criminal cartels of international finance. The puppet leaders of the United States, just like the puppets in Saudi Arabia and the puppets in Tel Aviv, have no real loyalties of any kind. They're happy to starve hungry children in the Bronx, just like they're happy to destroy innocent children with drone strikes. What the ruling global elite are very afraid of right now is that the people of the United States will begin to discover their own history. They're afraid that we'll learn about Nat Turner and John Brown. They're afraid that we'll discover the legacy of sit-down strikes and unemployment councils. They are terrified that we'll discover that it's not just the blood of racist settlers, cowboys, and slave owners that pumps through our veins, but that we, the people of the United States, indeed have a real heritage of resistance. When Bush and Obama and all the other officials in the U.S. who talk about a war on terror, when they talk about this war on terror, they're lying. It's the people's revolution of men and women, old and young, people from all across the planet, standing together to protect each other and demand a better world. It's the war to overthrow imperialism. This is the real war against terrorism, and I have no doubt that it will be victorious.